Some people enter our lives like light, quietly radiating warmth, safety, and sincerity. They teach us that love doesn't have to be a struggle, that it doesn't require sacrificing ourselves until there's nothing left. But others arrive like a storm. They stir everything within us, our emotions, perceptions, even our sense of self. And when they leave, what lingers is not just emptiness, but a profound confusion about who we are. Why do we hold on to someone who clearly doesn't value us? Many assume it's because the feelings are too deep or the bond has become too familiar. But through the lens of psychoanalysis, especially Carl Jung's teachings, the answer goes much deeper. It's not merely a story between you and that person. It's a silent dialogue between you and the unhealed parts of yourself. The relationships that wound us the most often reflect something ancient, an unconscious belief, a nameless wound, a forgotten longing rooted deep in childhood. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That quote is like a mirror, not only reflecting the present, but revealing the invisible patterns shaping our lives. Patterns that draw us to the same types of people, the same emotional dynamics, the same kinds of heartbreak. And when everything collapses again, we find ourselves asking the same question. Why me? Again. The truth is, there's a part of us that still believes we're not worthy of being fully loved. That part lies buried deep in the unconscious, shaped by early wounds or moments of abandonment we've never fully addressed. And when we don't recognize it, we unconsciously seek out people who recreate that same old feeling, because familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts. It's a strange paradox. We fear pain, yet we run toward what hurts us most, simply because it feels like home. And so we cling to a relationship we already know is toxic. We convince ourselves they'll change. If we try a little harder, maybe they'll finally see our worth. Love requires sacrifice, doesn't it? We repeat these mantras like lullabies to soothe ourselves into staying, even though deep down our intuition is whispering that this isn't where we belong. No one taught us to stay in a painful relationship, but no one taught us how to leave one peacefully either. So we stay not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of loneliness, fear of losing something that has become woven into the rhythm of our everyday breath. But more terrifying than all of that is the fear of facing ourselves in solitude. The fear of returning inward, only to confront the void we've spent years trying to fill with someone else. Letting go, then, is not a sign of weakness. It is perhaps the most courageous act we can offer ourselves, the courage to face, to heal, to stop seeking love in places that have nothing left to give. Letting go isn't simply removing someone from our lives. True release is an inner journey, a moment of clarity when we accept that no matter how hard we try, some things cannot be changed. It is the realization that authentic love never demands us to prove our worth, to endure suffering, or to constantly strive to be enough. In Jung's language, every relationship is a reflection. The other person acts as a mirror, not so we may see them, but so we may see ourselves, the fragile parts, the repressed desires, the unnamed fears. And if a relationship makes us feel small, disrespected, or perpetually begging for love, it may well be reflecting a deeper part of us that has not yet recognized its own inherent worth. No one can make us feel unworthy unless, somewhere deep within, we already believe it. This is not to blame the victim. It is a profound truth about how the psyche functions. What we attract in life often mirrors what we carry within. If we unconsciously believe that love must be earned, bargained for, or fought over, then we will be drawn, again and again, into that very dynamic. The shadow, a central concept in Jungian theory, is everything within us we've tried not to see. It is guilt. The fear of abandonment, repressed anger, hidden insecurities. And when we don't face it, it doesn't disappear, it simply moves. It transforms into a strange magnetism toward people who hurt us in familiar ways. It makes us mistake pain for love, sacrifice for value, abandonment for a test we must overcome. But love should never require begging. Real love is always offered freely. It is not a conquest to be won. If someone cannot see your worth, it is not your fault, and it is never your burden to prove otherwise. On the contrary, it is a signal, calling you home to yourself. A sign that it is time to hold yourself gently, to tend to the part of you that still believes it must be validated in order to be loved. The real question is not, how do I make them love me? But why do I remain in a relationship that constantly makes me doubt myself? And deeper still, what part of me is so desperate for affirmation that it's willing to endure pain just to feel seen? When you dare to ask these questions, you begin to awaken. When you stop reaching outward for love and instead turn inward in search of truth, you embark on a journey no one else can take for you, the journey back to yourself. Letting go, then, is not defeat but a silent victory. It is the quiet triumph of choosing not to trade your heart just to keep someone who was never worthy of it. It is the moment you begin to understand that self-love is not a luxury. It is the foundation of any healthy relationship. From the instant you start setting boundaries, from the moment you stop making excuses for indifference and begin listening to the quiet whispers within, you begin to rewrite your story. More importantly, you begin to make space for a new kind of loved one that is healthier, gentler, and freer. But before that, you must learn to let go, to release the shadow and the unspoken wounds that live within it. Within each of us exists a shadow, a key concept in Jungian psychology that refers to the repressed unconscious, the parts of ourselves we and society have deemed unacceptable. It might be the anger we're afraid to express, the fear of abandonment we try to deny, or the deep sense of inadequacy we tirelessly try to mask. And here lies the paradox. The parts we suppress the longest are often the ones that control our lives the most. The shadow is not merely a container for darkness. It also holds the raw, unrecognized truth of who we are, the dreams we silenced, the emotions labeled as weakness, the desires condemned as selfish. When these parts are not acknowledged or embraced, they don't disappear. Instead, they resurface not directly, but as intense reactions to relationships, irrational emotions, and haunting patterns that play out again and again. Have you ever asked yourself why you're drawn to those who make you feel uncertain? Why you repeatedly enter imbalanced relationships where you give far more than you receive? And why, no matter how hard you try, they never seem to truly see you? The answer lies in the shadow. If you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, only given when you were good, when you pleased others, when you earned it, then your unconscious absorbed a dangerous belief that love is not innate, but a reward to be won. And this belief is not just a thought, it becomes embedded deep within your emotional reflexes. It makes you uneasy with unconditional love. It stirs anxiety, even guilt, when someone genuinely cares for you. Most of all, it draws you to those who give just enough to match the threshold you're used to. We don't fall in love with people because they're extraordinary. We fall in love with those who awaken the unhealed places within us. The person who doesn't love you, the one who makes you feel like you must constantly strive just to be seen, they are not the real problem. The issue lies in your reaction to them. Why can't you walk away? Why do you feel the need to stay and prove your worth? And why are you so afraid of losing someone who has repeatedly made you feel small? That is the moment when the shadow speaks. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Healing, then, is not about denying the wound. Strength is not forged by turning away from pain. You must turn inward, toward the very places where you were once abandoned, overlooked, cast aside in the narrative of your own life. And here's the miracle. Once you are willing to see it, to truly accept it, it loses its power over you. When you realize that the recurring patterns in your relationships are not destiny, but reflections of an unconscious mind still shrouded in darkness, you begin to reclaim your freedom, not by choosing someone else, but by choosing yourself. And from that moment forward, something within you is set free. You stop trying to change someone to fill the emptiness inside you. You stop chasing those who only offer fragments while you are giving them your whole heart. You stop hoping that one day someone will wake up and finally recognize your worth, because you have already seen it for yourself. The clearer you see yourself, the more you begin to realize that much of what you once called love was simply the need to be filled, to fill the void, the doubt, the inner hollowness. And tragically, many relationships are born not out of wholeness, but from lack. When two people come together from a place of incompletion, they try to mend each other through expectation, failing to understand that no one can carry the burden of healing what the other has not yet faced. That's why we try to rescue those who do not want to be saved. That's why we pour our hearts into people who never fully show up. That's why we exhaust ourselves trying to be enough in someone else's eyes. The truth is, deep in your unconscious, it's not their love you're craving, it's their validation. You want someone to make you feel worthy of being chosen, of being held. And when they leave, the deepest pain is not just the loss of them, it's the feeling that you were not good enough to be kept. That's the wound that breaks us. But pause for a moment and look closely. Are you truly not enough, or are you simply viewing yourself through the distorted lens of someone who never really saw you clearly to begin with? Carl Jung emphasized that the shadow only loses its power when it is brought into the light. It is only when you recognize that the recurring patterns in your life are no longer random, but consequences of unhealed wounds, that you truly gain freedom. Letting go at this point is no longer the act of walking away from another person, but the act of leaving behind an old version of yourself, the version that believed you had to sacrifice, endure, and settle to be loved. When you refuse to keep living by that pattern, you don't just change how you love others, you change how you love yourself. This is where rebirth begins. You stop running from loneliness and learn to sit with it as a friend. You stop labeling endings as losses and start seeing them as doors opening to something new. You no longer fear losing someone because you have found the most important person yourself. And when you are truly connected to yourself, every relationship you build comes from wholeness, not fear, not need. Love then ceases to be a search. It becomes a meeting of two souls who are full enough and self-aware enough not to force each other to become anything at all. You find you are no longer drawn to those who make you doubt your worth. You no longer try to rescue broken souls with your love because you understand love is presence, not rescue. At this stage, the shadow ceases to be the controller. It becomes a guide, reminding you that within the pain lies a precious lesson, that the relationships which once drained you were opportunities to dive deep within, to understand yourself more clearly, and to grow authentically from the inside out. Jung wrote, "There is no awakening of consciousness without pain." Indeed, to see the light, you must dare to walk through darkness. To heal, you must dare to listen to the wounds. And to love healthily and fully, you must dare to choose yourself first. Secondly, letting go is not loss, but an act of freedom. When we think of letting go, the first feeling is often loss, losing someone, losing a hope, closing a chapter once beautiful. But there is a truth you only realize after enduring enough brokenness. Letting go is not losing, but returning to yourself. You never truly lose anyone, because those who leave your life never belonged to the place where your soul was nourished. The only thing lost in letting go is illusion, the story we tell ourselves to convince that we need them to be happy. But that is just a dream sustained by fear. Deep within, letting go is the soul's bravest act to break free from that dream. Jung once emphasized that True freedom does not come from gaining something external, but from liberation from internal constraints. The most dangerous constraints are not the relationships with others, but the relationships with false beliefs about yourself. When you believe you must hold on to someone who does not value you just to prove your worth, you are betraying your own soul. Letting go is an act of faith, not faith in others, but faith in yourself. Faith that you deserve something better. Faith that love does not have to be exhausting to be genuine. Faith that peace does not come from someone staying, but from knowing how to choose what is healthy for your heart. And like a natural law, when you begin to choose yourself, the universe begins to move. Things that no longer resonate will drift away. Things aligned with your energy will come to you. You no longer have to cling, hold, or fight. Because what is meant for you will never demand that you give up yourself to have it. How many times have you sacrificed your dignity just to stay? How many times have you shrunk yourself, silenced your voice, and suppressed your sadness just to hold on to a relationship that wasn't truly worthy? And after all, you still feel empty. You are not wrong to love. You simply haven't yet learned to love yourself more than you love others. You have yet to believe that love is a meeting between two whole people, not a place where one rescues another who is broken. Someone once asked how to know when it's time to let go. The simple answer is when their presence makes you feel more anxious than peaceful. When you have to guess whether today they will love you or be indifferent. When you have to invent hundreds of reasons to justify their coldness. When you have to trade your own inner truth just to maintain something that has long decayed. Letting go is not selfish. It is liberation. Liberation from a role you are exhausted from playing. Liberation from a bond that no longer lets you be yourself. And most importantly, liberation from the belief that you are not enough without someone beside you. Someone who truly loves you will never make you feel like you have to fight for affection. A healthy relationship never leaves you caught between doubt and expectation. True love never forces you to ignore your intuition to believe promises. This world is vast, and within it are people willing to love you without requiring you to earn it. But you will never meet them if you keep holding tightly to what no longer fits. You cannot welcome the new if your hands remain clenched around the past. And that is why letting go is not loss. It is the first step to making space for better things. There are moments in life when clarity arrives with undeniable force. What truly hurts is not that they left, but the realization of how long you have been harming yourself to hold them close. How many times have you gone against your intuition? How many times have you shut your eyes and ignored the clear signs that this is no longer where you belong? And then, one day, you can no longer endure not because of them, but because of yourself. When you let go, you're not just saying goodbye to a person. You're walking away from an old version of yourself. The version that believed love only comes when you are good enough, obedient enough, self-sacrificing enough. But the truth is, true love doesn't require you to earn it. It only asks that you show up as your true self, without masks, without roles, without becoming someone else. One of love's greatest paradoxes is that when you stop desperately trying to be loved, love naturally finds you. Because in that moment, you no longer emit the energy of lack, no longer attract those who come to fill a void. Instead, you radiate the energy of wholeness, and it is this energy that resonates with other mature souls. Carl Jung called this synchronicity. Events that seem coincidental, but carry profound meaning precisely when you are ready to receive them. When you let go, you send an invisible message to the universe. I have learned this lesson. I have chosen myself. I am ready for something better. And right then, goodness begins to arrive, not loud, not forced, but quietly and authentically. Yet before this happens, you must pass through a void, a silence, a period when your mind raises countless questions. Am I wrong? Will someone else love me? Am I being too harsh? This is the ego's last resistance. That part of you so used to tethering your self-worth to someone else's presence. Don't fear these questions. They are not enemies. They are temporary companions on the path you walk, the path back to your own truth. And remember, you don't have to answer them immediately. You only need to keep moving forward, because on the other side of doubt lies a certainty you have never touched before, the certainty that you don't need anyone else to feel complete. Letting go is a silent yet revolutionary decision. It doesn't need recognition, applause, or understanding. It only needs you in the most honest moment with your heart to say, I deserve more than this, and to choose to step forward. You might cry. You might feel shattered. But within that very breaking, you're shedding an old shell, the shell of expectations, assumptions, and patterns mistakenly learned from the past. You are becoming lighter, freer, more authentic. From this place, you no longer seek love as a form of salvation. You no longer rely on someone else to prove that you are worthy of love. You no longer hope for someone to change so your life becomes easier. Instead, you have taken on the greatest responsibility, to love yourself first. This is not an ending but a beginning. The beginning of a love that is no longer rooted in lack. The beginning of relationships where you can be truly yourself without compromising your identity. The beginning of a life where you no longer chase after anything because you have realized that the most precious thing is not outside, but inside you. Thirdly, rebirth from the ruins. When love begins with yourself, after a relationship ends, what remains is not just sorrow but a void. That void may feel like it tears you apart. You don't know who you are without that person. Don't know where to start again. Don't know if you can love again. Yet within that very emptiness, seemingly desolate, the seed of rebirth begins to sprout. Carl Jung once said, "True change only comes after an inner crisis." And what crisis is deeper than looking back on what we once gave, believed in, and clung to, and accepting that it no longer fits? Rebirth does not come after forgetting the old love. It comes when you remember yourself. Because in unbalanced relationships, we often lose ourselves without realizing it. We were once bright, confident, free, but gradually, to be loved, we grew quieter, more compromising, smaller fitting the mold of the other. And when that relationship breaks, the pain is not just losing them, but not recognizing ourselves anymore. Letting go, when done mindfully, is a process of returning. You come back to gather the pieces of yourself that were left behind. The old hobbies you once abandoned, the boundaries you allowed others to cross, the feelings you suppressed just to keep the peace. You begin reconnecting with the inner voice, the one silenced by the noise of expectations and fear. And then a miracle happens. You start to feel comfortable being alone, not lonely, but in a rare stillness. A sense that you don't need anyone beside you to feel worthy. That you can sip coffee alone and feel at peace. That you can sleep deeply without waiting for a message. That you can walk through a bustling street without feeling lost. Because in the end, you have become your own most trusted companion. True love begins at the moment when you no longer love out of lack but out of wholeness. When you stop seeking someone to fill a void and instead open your heart to genuine connections born from mutual freedom to choose each other. You don't need love to feel complete. But precisely because you are already whole, love comes, and this time, it no longer wounds you. Rebirth is not a return to what was. It is an upgrade. You are no longer the person who once accepted scraps just to keep someone. You are no longer the one who doubted your own worth. You have moved through the breaking and not only survived but grown from it. You learned how to hold yourself in moments of tears. You learned how to say no without guilt. You discovered that love is not about holding on, but about letting go and allowing the other to choose to stay. You learned not to react immediately to pain, but to step back and understand what it reveals about your old wounds. And you learned the greatest lesson. No one can give you the love you have never first given yourself. When you have passed through the pain without wanting to look back, when you can see the silhouette of the past without your heart trembling, that is when you know you have truly been reborn. Not because the other changed, not because someone new came to fill the emptiness, but because you have become someone else, a stronger, deeper person, with enough love to no longer accept what is unworthy. You realize that what you once called fate was only an unrecognized pattern. What you once called love might have been just the fear of abandonment in disguise. And what you once clung to with all your heart turned out to be the very thing blocking your growth. Jung said, "You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The darkness he spoke of is not outside, but within you, the place holding limiting beliefs, painful memories, fears unnamed. And when you dare to step into it, dare to look straight at that shadow, what you gain is not darkness, but the light of awareness. Because the moment you understand the root of your pain, you are no longer a victim. You become a creator. You no longer ask why they hurt you, but ask what you have learned by letting them into your life. When you stop blaming, stop justifying, stop waiting for recognition from those who made you doubt yourself, you have truly grown. Rebirth is not loud. It arrives in the simplest moments. When you dare to say no to what hurts you, when you refuse to reply to messages from those who only reach out in loneliness, when you choose to stay home with a book rather than chase exhausting pleasures, these small but powerful decisions come from someone who has learned to love themselves. Love that begins from within is no longer an obsession. It ceases to be a place where you seek comfort, and it is no longer something you fear losing. It becomes something you share naturally, without force. You no longer need someone else to feel whole. Yet, you remain open because your love now flows not from lack, but from abundance. You will realize that those who once hurt you no longer hold power over you, not because they changed, but because you are no longer the version of yourself dependent on their gaze. Their silence no longer steals your sleep. Their coldness no longer makes you doubt yourself. For now, you no longer reflect yourself through them. Instead, you see yourself through the light you have kindled within. And in that light, one truth becomes clear. True love never demands you to abandon yourself. It never asks you to accept less than you deserve. It never makes you feel small, insufficient, or flawed. That kind of love, if it exists, will lift you up, nurture your growth, and make you feel as if you have come home. You will no longer accept relationships that cause you to question your worth. You will no longer trade your peace to keep someone. You will no longer need to do anything to earn love. Because now, you know that the right person will love you naturally. No fighting, no sacrifice, no pretending. Rebirth is not the moment you rise dazzlingly to impress others, but when you quietly close an old chapter without resentment or regret, and continue your story with a calm hand, a healed heart, and a clear mind. Fourth, love is not suffering. It is letting go of the pattern of loving to be accepted. There is a deep-rooted belief in many people's unconscious that love always comes with pain, that to love is to endure, that without sacrifice, without hurt, without heartbreak, it is not real love. This belief is not accidental. It often stems from childhood, from early experiences of affection. Perhaps you grew up in a home where love never arrived gently. It came when you behaved correctly, when you stayed silent, when you pleased the adults. And if you did not, affection was withdrawn through scolding, coldness, or prolonged silence. And so you learn a dangerous lesson. Love must be earned. It does not come naturally, but is a reward for those who know how to please, how to sacrifice, how to shrink themselves to fit the eyes of others. Over time, this lesson hardens into a pattern, and that pattern becomes an unconscious guide for your future romantic choices. You begin to seek out those who love according to the old script, those who make you struggle, wait, prove your worth. And ironically, when you meet someone who loves you gently, unconditionally, you feel strange. You doubt it. You cannot believe it is real, because your subconscious has equated love with pain. Without pain, how can it be true? Jung called this projection. You project unconscious beliefs and expectations onto others, and then react to that reflected image. You don't see the person as they are, but as a mirror of your old wounds. And if your pattern of love is tied to struggle, you unconsciously push yourself into relationships where you are always at a disadvantage, always having to try harder, always feeling not enough. You call it fate, but in truth, it is your subconscious at work. You call it destiny, but really, it is an unrecognized loop. You think you are in love, but what you are truly seeking is validation, and love, when turned into a tool for proving your worth, will always exhaust you. True love does not wear you out. It does not make you doubt yourself every day. It does not leave you waiting for someone to acknowledge your silent efforts. True love brings peace. It makes you feel seen, understood, and free to be yourself without having to force yourself into an idealized version. To reach that kind of love, you must let go. But not just let go of a person. Let go of the old pattern that love is struggle, sacrifice, and pain. You must courageously face the question, why do you feel uncomfortable when loved gently? Perhaps because you have never experienced it. Perhaps because you fear losing control. Perhaps because you are so used to carrying burdens that you no longer know how to relax. And the heartbreaking truth is that sometimes you sabotage healthy relationships simply because a part of you still believes you don't deserve to be loved easily. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This statement serves as a powerful reminder. It tells you that every recurring pattern in your life is the voice of your shadow. And when you illuminate that shadow, you gain the power to choose again, not to choose another person, but to choose the way you love and to choose yourself on that journey. When you begin to bring your subconscious into awareness, you realize love is not something to be bargained with through pain. You don't have to sacrifice your dignity, hide your true feelings, or constantly please others to hold on to a relationship. Nor do you need to live in daily fear that they will grow cold, fear of abandonment, fear that an unanswered message signals the end. True love does not make you live in tension. It does not make you feel like you must perform to be loved. Instead, it is the space where you can be yourself without barriers, without masks, without having to prove anything. Most importantly, it is a place where you feel so safe you can exhale deeply, be vulnerable without judgment, remain silent without being abandoned. To reach such a place, you must relearn how to love from the beginning. You must unravel layer by layer the false beliefs implanted long ago. You must ask yourself why you are drawn to coldness. Perhaps because that coldness is familiar. Perhaps because you once had to struggle to earn a bit of love from your parents or someone else in childhood. Now, you are only repeating an old game with a new face. You must ask why you always feel like you give too much. Perhaps because you never learned how to receive. Perhaps you were taught that thinking about your own needs is selfish, that love means sacrifice, that the other person must come first. But that is not love, that is dependence. And dependence always leads to imbalance. When you begin to dismantle these layers, you stop chasing love. You become the builder of love. You no longer seek someone to fill a void, to prove your worth, or to heal your wounds. You choose someone to grow with. You choose someone not because they are the only one willing to stay, but because they are the one with whom you can freely be yourself. And if you have never experienced such a healthy love, that is okay. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It simply means you have yet to connect deeply enough with yourself to invite it in. Because love is a reflection. The more you love yourself, the more the world will send you those who love you in return. You may have endured relationships that made you doubt everything. You may have been betrayed, abandoned, or belittled. But that does not mean you are unworthy. It only means you loved before truly understanding yourself. And now, as you begin the journey inward, you have the chance to choose again, this time from a place of wholeness. Carl Jung once said, "Do not make the mistake of thinking that suffering is the goal. It is merely a signal." Pain in love is never something you must endure to achieve happiness. It is a warning bell urging you to look inward, to change the way you love, and most importantly, to begin with yourself, not with anyone else. Love does not require you to suffer or endure. True love is when you feel seen without having to shout, heard without begging, loved without needing to prove it. And once you understand this, you will never settle for less again. This is the moment to rewrite the definition of love for yourself, not as something intertwined with pain, lack, or insecurity, but as a love born from self-understanding, self-respect, and mutual respect. To have that love, you don't need to wait for someone else to change. You only need to choose yourself clearly and steadfastly every single day. Fifth, loneliness is not the enemy. It is the quietude of an inner mature self. We live in a world where loneliness is viewed as something to avoid, even branded as failure. A person without a lover is seen as unhappy. Someone who eats alone is assumed to be sad. Silence in a crowd invites suspicion. Loneliness, in the eyes of many, becomes a symbol of lack, helplessness, and unlovability. But is that truly the case? Carl Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no one around, but from being unable to share the things that seem important to you with anyone." This statement overturns the traditional definition of loneliness. It shows that loneliness is not about the number of people around you, but about the quality of connection between you and yourself. You can be in a room full of laughter and still feel empty. You can be in a long-term relationship and still feel lost. You can have hundreds of friends on social media, but not one who truly listens to you in moments of pain. What you lack is not people, but connection. And sometimes, the paradox is that you must learn to be alone before you can truly connect with others. Being alone does not mean isolation. It is the time you return to yourself. It is when you no longer need anyone to fill the void, no longer worry about what others think, and no longer run away into meaningless distractions. Being alone is when you learn to sit quietly with your true emotions, whether sadness, anger, boredom, or emptiness. Because only when you dare to face them can you begin to understand. When you start learning to be alone, you realize that in the past, you clung to others not out of love, but out of fear of facing your inner voice. Fear of abandonment. Fear of the overwhelming ache that rises when the room falls silent. And because of that fear, you stayed. Because of that fear, you tried to please. Because of that fear, you accepted less than you deserve. But true maturity comes when you stop fearing silence. When you begin to see the beauty of stillness, where there is no noise of desire, expectation, or pretense. When you can sit through an afternoon with no calls, no messages, no one caring, and still feel at peace, not because you don't need anyone, but because you have become a friend good enough to yourself. Jung once said, "Those who cannot face the darkness within will be controlled by it from behind, and call that fate." Similarly, those who cannot be alone will cling to the wrong connections and call it love. But love never arises from fear. True love comes from freedom, and you cannot be free if you depend on someone else's presence to feel worthy. When you are alone, you begin to reconnect with the truest parts of yourself, your passions, interests, dreams, and the pieces you once abandoned while chasing after someone else. You spend time doing what you love, listening to your body, nurturing your soul. You no longer need permission from anyone. You are free to be yourself. You grant yourself that freedom, and then a miracle happens. When you no longer fear solitude, You become more attractive than ever, not because you try to appear fine, but because the energy you radiate is that of a self-mastered, whole person who needs nothing to complete themselves. When you live authentically, you attract others who live authentically. When you no longer need others to feel happy, you begin to build relationships where both come together, not out of lack, but out of a desire to walk side by side. Once you've learned to be alone, loneliness ceases to be a fear and becomes a teacher one that imparts what no one else can teach, that the most valuable presence in your life is yourself, and all the love, understanding, and acceptance you once endlessly sought in others can begin from within. Perhaps you once thought you needed someone else to feel loved, but when you truly listen to yourself, you realize you don't need anyone to validate your existence. You only need a quiet space deep enough to hear your own heart clearly. Loneliness, in its deepest meaning, is the door leading you home. There, you learn to care for yourself as if you were your own best friend. You ask yourself what you need, what you enjoy, where you feel tired, what you long for. You pause instead of running away. You listen instead of drowning out your feelings. And you heal not by trying to forget the pain, but by placing your hand on it and saying, I am here. I will not abandon myself anymore. You may cry, you may doubt, and there may be days when you want to return to old habits of seeking someone to fill the ache. But then you realize no one can do that better than you. External fills are temporary. True wholeness comes from within. You will see this most clearly when those who once hurt you try to return, when they speak the old sweet words, when they evoke the memories you once called love. But now, you no longer tremble. You no longer see it as something irresistible, because you now know you can stand firm without needing anyone to hold your hand. This is not rigidity, but maturity. You do not close your heart. You simply don't open it to those unworthy. You still love, but you love from a place of strength, not from a place that needs saving. You do not love to fill a void. You love to share and spread light together. When loneliness is truly understood, it becomes fertile ground for creativity, growth, and reconnection. Those brave enough to walk through this land are the strongest, not because they need no one, but because they know how to choose whom to let in, when to let them in, and how to do so without losing themselves. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." And there is no better way to look inward than to learn how to live with yourself in silence. When you pause, you see clearly what is real and what is merely a mask created by fear, by wounds, by old beliefs, yet to be transformed. Being alone is when you gather your scattered energy, piece yourself back together, not relying on others to complete you, and lay a solid foundation for all future relationships. Because if you never learn to be with yourself, you will always need someone else just to avoid feeling lost. And that is not love, that is dependence. Those who know how to be alone are the ones who can love most healthily. They do not love out of lack. They love from abundance. They do not seek a partner out of fear, but from a genuine desire to share. And when two such people meet, those unafraid of silence, they won't try to fill each other's gaps, but will stand side by side, free, yet deeply connected. That is when solitude becomes the fertile soil, nurturing a new kind of love, a love that begins not from desire, but from awakening. Sixth, synchronicity and opportunities only arise when you let go. There are moments in life when you release something seemingly vital, and immediately another door unexpectedly opens a new chance, a new person, a new journey. At first glance, this may seem like mere coincidence, but for Carl Jung, it is a clear phenomenon known as synchronicity. Jung defines synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence between an inner event and an outer event that lacks a clear cause and effect relationship, but is deeply connected through meaning. Simply put, it is when the external world responds to your inner state. When you change, the world changes with you. When you let go, more fitting things begin to appear. But why does this only happen after you release? Because before that, you were too busy holding on, clinging to a person, a relationship, or a past image, and in doing so, you leave no space to receive something new. Your energy gets trapped in old loops, obsessions, regrets, or hopeless expectations that the other person will change. Every opportunity that passes by your life goes unnoticed because your mind keeps returning to the past. But when you dare to let go, when you no longer place the past at the center, and when you accept the present as it is, the sky begins to change color. You meet someone you can speak honestly with something you once thought rare. You receive a job offer, a connection, an experience that seems to come from nowhere but perfectly matches your inner journey. You start noticing signs you previously overlooked, a phrase, a book, a coincidence. It feels as if the universe is whispering that you are on the right path. Synchronicity does not come when you try to control it. It arrives when you trust. And the key to stepping into this flow of synchronicity is letting go. Not letting go out of disappointment, but letting go consciously. Not to fill the void with something else, but to open space for what truly fits to come in. Many asked how to distinguish synchronicity from coincidence. The answer lies in your inner feeling. When an event happens exactly when you need it, right after you have released an old burden and deeply moves you, it is not random. It is the universe's response to the shift in your energy. You cannot summon synchronicity by pretending to let go. The universe does not respond to words, but to vibration. When you genuinely release what no longer serves you from deep within, you will notice everything begins to operate differently. The things that once troubled you no longer have the same hold. The things you once thought impossible begin to become possible. That is when you enter a flow where everything unfolds more smoothly, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you have stopped resisting it. You no longer blame or force things. You live proactively yet with ease. You trust not blindly, but with understanding. And you choose not out of lack, but because you know what truly resonates with you. The clearer you understand yourself, the deeper your connection with your inner being, the more precisely the outside world aligns with you. Not because you control everything, but because you emit a clear frequency, a silent invitation to the universe saying, I am ready. I have learned my old lessons, and I welcome the new, not from a place of lack anymore. Synchronicity is not just about unexpected opportunities or fateful encounters. It is also the profound feeling that you are on the right path, even though much ahead remains unknown. It is the wordless relief when you begin to find meaning even in the things that once caused you pain. It is when you realize that everything that happened was meant to bring you back to yourself. One of the clearest signs of synchronicity is that you no longer feel the need to push everything forward. In the past, you tried to hold on to someone, to please, to maintain fragile connections. But now you understand that if something requires too much effort to keep, perhaps it no longer belongs to you. And you start to let go not bitterly, but peacefully. You stop chasing, stop forcing, stop creating stories in your mind and expecting reality to match them. You begin to live with what is, with those who are present, with small yet real things. And surprisingly, the moment you stop trying to attract something, it begins to come. Because you no longer need it to feel whole. You were already whole before. When you let go, you free energy. You are no longer stuck in old patterns, no longer pouring life into hopeless places. That energy returns to you and becomes the strength to create a new reality, one no longer based on fear, but on conscious choice. You choose to love without losing yourself. You choose connection without dependence. You choose to walk with others while keeping your own rhythm. You choose to let go, not because you have stopped loving, but because you have loved yourself enough to know where to stop. Jung once wrote, "No awakening comes without pain, and letting go is an indispensable part of that journey. It hurts, but it is the pain born from growth, from withdrawing from what was once familiar but no longer fits. It is from this retreat that you create space for something new to sprout, a new opportunity, a new person, a part of yourself never before discovered with a different kind of love, deeper, healthier, more authentic. And then one day, when you look back, you will smile at yourself. The good things didn't come from holding on, they came when you had enough faith to let go. 7th, no one truly belongs to us. Letting go is love in its mature form. One of the deepest illusions we carry on the journey of love is the belief that someone belongs to us. We call that person our other half, our destined soulmate, the irreplaceable one, as if without them, we would be incomplete. But the truth is, no one truly belongs to anyone. We meet each other on life's path, not to possess, but to accompany. And any bond only holds meaning when it arises from willingness, freedom, and the choice to renew itself every day, not from coercion, clinging, or fear of loss. Carl Jung once said, "All possession is a sign of an immature ego." When you try to hold on to someone at all costs, when you make them the center of your world, when you feel meaningless without them, that is not love, that is clinging. And clinging itself is a form of resistance to life. Because life is always in motion. People change, emotions shift. Nothing is permanent, not even love. The only thing that can make love endure is conscious companionship. Every day, two people choose to see each other with new eyes. Every day, they choose to stay not out of obligation, but because the resonance remains. Every day, they choose to love not from lack, but because the presence of the other makes them better. And precisely because of that, mature love always comes with the understanding that the other may leave at any moment. Yet today, they are still here, and you are grateful for that. This awareness deepens love, because you do not love from a place of possession, but from gratitude. You do not love to keep, but to understand. You do not love to control, but to see the other clearly, even when they no longer fit with you. And if one day they no longer choose you, you can still stand strong. Not because you are indifferent, but because you understand. True love never comes from obligation. It is only beautiful when both look in the same direction. And when that no longer happens, you need not resent. True maturity is when you let go, yet keep respect in your heart. Letting go in this sense is not defeat. It is the noblest act a mature heart can perform. It is when you are strong enough not to cling to what no longer supports your growth. It is when you love yourself enough to say, "I do not want love born of pity, duty, or habit. I want it to come from freedom, choice, and genuine presence." When you understand this, you no longer see love as something to be held onto at all costs. You begin to perceive it as a flowing current, sometimes converging, sometimes diverging. Yet all forms deserve respect. And when two people no longer walk the same path, you can let go without resentment, without tearing apart memories, without turning the past into fault. You simply close a chapter gently. Letting go of someone you once loved is not a denial of the feelings that existed, but an acknowledgement that some relationships no longer reflect who you are now. There are connections that were once beautiful, but now feel strained. There are embraces that once offered refuge and peace, but have become mere habits, leaving both feeling suffocated. Instead of clinging to maintain a form, a mature person chooses to release and free both sides, because they understand that no one is born to complete another. No one must stay forever to make the other happy. True love demands no loss of self. It exists only when two free souls choose to journey together each day from sincerity, not fear. Someone who loves you does not do so because you fit their ideal mold. Someone who truly loves you will never ask you to sacrifice your inner truth just to remain by their side. And if you've ever had to strain yourself to hold on to someone, Perhaps what you were really holding on to was not love, but the fear of losing something deeply entwined with your old identity. Inner maturity teaches you that love is not something you fight for, especially if you are the only one wielding the weapon. Love is not a battle, nor a negotiation. It is resonance. And if one person withdraws from the shared melody, you cannot continue harmonizing by playing a sad solo. When you let go, you are not surrendering. You are pausing to prevent further hurt. You preserve the most beautiful parts of each other by not distorting them any further. You protect yourself from losing more trust, more clarity, and your capacity to love healthily in the future. The mature know that some people accompany you only partway, and their departure does not diminish your worth. It simply means you and they have fulfilled your roles in each other's stories. Every relationship acts as a mirror, reflecting back parts of yourself that need healing until the lesson is complete and it is time to say goodbye. This is not failure, but evolution. You are no longer the version of yourself that needed them to feel whole, and they may no longer be the person who needs you at this moment. The most beautiful gift you can offer them now is to let go with gratitude, with lightness, and with a respectful bow from the depths of your soul. Jung once emphasized that anyone who has never confronted the dissolution of what they once believed to be eternal love has yet to truly delve into the depths of themselves. It is precisely through these moments of breaking apart that you begin to distinguish clarity from attachment born of habit, fear, or lack. And after all the pain, you come to understand a seemingly simple truth that takes immense suffering to grasp. No one truly belongs to you. No one is obligated to stay. No one owes you love simply because they once walked alongside you through beautiful times. And no one can forever fill the void within you if you yourself are not whole from within. You love, you give, you walk alongside, but you do not possess, and therefore you do not collapse when someone leaves. You no longer see love as a crutch, but as a gift only beautiful when offered freely, consciously, and between two people who have learned to stand firmly on their own. An ending is not failure. It is rebirth born from the decision to choose yourself. Some endings come gently, like a sigh, no tears, no clinging, only a quiet peace. Because you understand that everything has its time, and at some point, the most beautiful thing you can do is to stop. To stop is not because love has run out, but because you have loved enough. To stop is not failure, but growth. To stop is not escape, but a return to yourself. In life's journey, we are often taught how to begin, but rarely how to end. We learn to love, to hope, to hold on. Yet no one teaches us how to close a chapter without hurting ourselves. We fear endings because we assume they mean loss, failure, or inadequacy. But if you have walked this far with me, through every part of the journey, you must have sensed that endings are not failures. Endings can be the first step toward rebirth, the moment you choose yourself after years of losing your way, when you look back without blame, without expectation, only with a nod that says, I did my best. Carl Jung also said no one becomes whole without undergoing a painful journey, and that pain often comes from what we must let go, not because it is bad, but because it no longer fits. Letting go of a person, of an expectation, of a part of yourself that is no longer true. In that letting go, you do not lose yourself. On the contrary, you begin reclaiming the parts long forgotten. You stop investing energy in meaningless arguments. You no longer justify a relationship that has lost its life. You cease blaming, cease hoping to carry old roles. You become lighter, clearer, and more authentic. You know who you are and what you need. You are no longer easily shaken by others' gazes, fleeting emotions, or unfulfilled promises. You become the keeper of your own rhythm. And from that place, you begin to love again, not another, but yourself. Loving the way you resiliently survived days when you felt you could not go on. Loving the courage it took to step away from what no longer served you. Loving the fact that you no longer beg for love, but recognize your worth. Loving even the scars, for they are the marks of the journey you have traveled, not signs of ugliness. When you choose yourself, everything begins to shift, not immediately, but surely. You no longer feel the need for someone else to live your life. You no longer place your happiness in the hands of another. You no longer wait for someone to arrive at the perfect moment. You live fully in each moment, knowing that if love comes, it will find you in this state of wholeness. An ending is not a stop. It is a transformation. It is when you dare to close an old door and step into the quiet corridor of healing. It is when you pause the chase to listen to your own heart, when you stop trying to be someone else and begin living as your truest self. Rebirth does not shout or seek validation. It arrives like the dawn after a long night, gentle, bright enough, warm enough, to show you that all that is past was not meaningless. Every cracked wound that once bled, every word that made you cry, every time you had to let go while your heart still trembled. These are the steps that lead you back to yourself. And after all, you are still here strong enough, gentle enough. For the first time, you truly know how to love, not to hold on to someone else, but to hold on to yourself. An ending is a return. Rebirth is the act of one who loves from within. And you deserve a love that begins with understanding yourself, with wholeness and gratitude. If these words bring you comfort, illumination, or simply the feeling of being heard, perhaps your soul is beating in rhythm with wisdom unveiled. This is not just a place to tell stories, but a place to come home, a place where those once wounded learn to heal, where the lost learn to embrace themselves. Follow the Wisdom Unveiled channel to continue journeying alongside awakenings like this. Every word here is written to soothe the storm inside you, every piece a whisper. You are not alone, and you deserve to live with the full peace of your heart. If you are on the path back to yourself, I believe we will meet again in another piece right here. Don't forget to hit follow, share, and leave a few words if what you find here touches your heart.